Today's episode of Construction Genius is somewhat unique. It is a discussion with the CEO of Harbor Capital, Levi Benkert. And Harbor Capital is a hyper-focused Class A and B industrial real estate investment firm operating in Texas. And what's interesting about this is Levi's journey from a newly married 18-year-old who purchased his first home in, of all places, Sacramento, California, where I'm sitting right now, to growing a business that has a goal of getting to $1 billion in assets under management by 2030. And he is currently crushing that goal. But what's interesting about my discussion with Levi is how he has grown as a person through his involvement in business over the years, through the successes and the failures. And what he is focused on in order to grow a company that not only fulfills himself, but also provides a tremendous return on investment for the people who are invested with his partners. And I have Levi on because we want to talk about a particular deal that he's doing at the moment with a construction company that I think you'll find very interesting. And I would like you to think about how Levi frames his deals and the approach that he takes to real estate investment, and how that might influence the way that you look at real estate investment as you have grown your construction company and have these types of opportunities presented to you in one way or another. But we also get into some more personal aspects of life and how Levi has benefited from the ups and downs of life, the lessons that he's learned in therapy, the lessons that he's learned in business, even the lessons that he's learned from having children at a young age and how that's impacted his parenting style and the way that he, as someone who's been financially successful, coming from a background of little financial success, how that's affected the way he relates to his children and the way that he wants them to think about money and the uses of money. All that to say is that I think you'll find this conversation very interesting and helpful, and I really want you to enjoy it. Take some takeaways from it. Make sure that you visit Levi on Twitter and also his website. All the links are in the show notes. And I just want to thank him for coming on the show today. It was a great time. And I want to thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Levi, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here.
You know, I'm excited to have you on the show. You're the CEO of Harbor Capital, which is a real estate investment firm. And real estate investing is in your bones. And that's because you purchased your first house when you were 18. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. My wife and I got married real young. I was 18, and within 4 or 5 months, we thought, gosh, we probably shouldn't be renting. Literally walked into a real estate agent's office. Happened to be a guy there, Brian McMartin. I still remember his name. And he should have kicked us out the door, but didn't. Sat us down and said, how much money do you have saved up? And gosh, at the time, I think it was like $1,500 or something. I mean, we just gotten married. Neither of us went to college, just starting out. And he said, I know of a couple of programs, we'll get you into an FHA loan, but you got to start saving money real quick. Like, ask friends and family and figure out what you can do. Gosh, within a week or so, we found a house, $105,000 house in downtown Sacramento or midtown Sacramento. Put an offer in, got a couple of different, FHA, I think it was called the Nehemiah program. They basically loan you money.
Yep.
That if you keep the house for more than 5 years, then you don't have to pay it back. Of course, we sold it a year later. We did have to pay it back, but made a bunch of money on the sale. And it's funny, this very first meeting, we met this guy. He pulled out of his desk a book called The Richest Man in Babylon and handed it to me. And said, you're going to need to read this before we actually buy a house. I went home and I read it in like a day. I mean, I still remember concepts from that book. It was just this life-changing moment.
So your first house, because I'm sitting here in Sacramento right now.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah. But I got to go back because I know what I was thinking when I was 18, but it wasn't much about I shouldn't be renting, I should be buying. So where does that thinking even come from? Well, first, obviously getting married young is
Very young. Yes.
I know people who do get married young, but it is rather unusual. But tell me more about why was it that you and your wife so early were thinking that way? Where do you get that?
We both grew up in not the most functional of households with and getting married young. And, we've kind of realized this through therapy was a bit of a reaction of trying to find or create our own safety early on.
Interesting.
And so we both wanted to, kind of found each other and found it fantastic. We've been married 22 years now. Just incredible marriage. I'm so thankful for her. We both were kind of looking for safety and companionship in a way that we could build something. And so I think for both of us, it was just this we got to get to work. If you're going to do this, you got to do it right. Our first son was born a year after we got married. We actually owned that house when he was born in that house when we lived there.
Where in Sac was it? I'm sorry, I'm in Sac.
23rd and N Street.
Nice. Not bad. Not
That's
bad.
right. Good spot. I'm sure that house is worth $800,000 right now.
Dude, totally, dude. Believe me, I'm not like in a super ritzy neighborhood and prices are just crazy, dude.
It's insane. Insane. Yeah, so we lived there for a year, sold it. During that time, started actually 2 different coffee shops in Sacramento. Those were literally 4 blocks down the road. The first one was 4 blocks down the road. The other one was a couple of miles away.
What were the coffee shops? Tell me the names.
Isidore's Coffee and Tea, it was called at the time. We sold it and then it was rebranded. It's still there. Every time we go by it, it's on N Street and I believe it's like 19th or 18th and N. Yeah. It's still there. It's funny. I rented an old bookstore and did all of the work myself. So I put in all of the plumbing and electrical and kind of built this entire fit out for this coffee shop myself for about $15,000 or $20,000, and then ran that for a year and sold that and did well with that sale too. Just real estate from the beginning. Realized, I ended up flipping houses for a long time and then ended up buying a house. I just posted about this yesterday on Twitter. Bought a house that had some land in an area that was zoned to where you could split that land off, and kind of learned the incredible power of subdividing and convincing the city that you can get a new plat map put in place.
Let me ask you, Levi, as you're going through this journey here, you're starting young, you and your wife got married young, you got kids young. How was the dynamic with you and your wife as you're going through the ups and the downs of that? Was it, you're just same mindset, same, perspective? How did that all work? I'm just curious.
No, it's funny. We both joke. I think we've both been married to 3 different people over the last 22 years because both of us have kind of changed and ebbed and flowed so much. And starting out kind of without an education and without, there was no inheritance or anything available for each of us. We really had to fight our way up from the bottom. And there was just this kind of relentlessness that I bring, and God help her for having to put up with me. If I'm always pushing and always going and making it, just continuing to put effort towards creating success relentlessly throughout our relationship. And so that is both good and bad, right? It's put pressure, but it's also meant that we've always been pretty well taken care of, kind of regardless of the situation.
So, beginning in the residential, and, it's a familiar story for many people. They see the light goes on in terms of what you can do with real estate, and you're doing the residential part. How did you begin to move into the more industrial, commercial aspect of real estate investment? Yeah,
so honestly, it took quite a while. I'll condense quite a long story of 20 years into a couple of minutes here, but flipped houses and then bought one house that had some land and started doing land development. And then started for years, kind of this was 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 2008, was buying farmland in and around Sacramento, kind of West Sacramento, a bunch of it in West Sacramento, farmland and kind of undeveloped land, and then subdivided it. Where the pyramid building is in West Sacramento and the Calsters, I owned about 80% of that neighborhood around there.
Are you serious?
I did. So I owned 6 or 7 full city blocks of land that I had assembled by buying, I bought an old trailer park and got rid of that. I bought a whole bunch of different development sites there, and so basically kind of learned that I could go in and buy something, get it rezoned, get it changed, and create a lot of value there.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
Fun area. It's fun to go drive through there now because all of the rezoning that I did stuck. And so there's a bunch of really nice, class A, multifamily and condo developments that have
Are you
gone
talking
up.
right on the river there by the ballpark?
Exactly.
Dude, that's beautiful there.
Just to the north of, like, really right around the CalSTRS building.
Yeah.
So you go over the old bridge, and it's just a gorgeous area. And so I literally had 400 lots in that neighborhood that I had developed and rezoned. And some of them I'd put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk and everything all the way up until 2008. And then the market, just dropped so far. And that was still at the time kind of known as a pretty bad neighborhood. Now it's fantastic, but it was a bad neighborhood. And so all the lenders were done. They said, we're not going to lend on housing in this area. We're not going to lend, on housing period in Sacramento. There's just too much housing. There was so much speculative buying and so many mortgage programs that were available that became not available anymore.
The money store was right there, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The spigot just got shut off. And so I ended up having to, it was definitely a rough period in 2008 of having to kind of go back and hand back the keys to the lenders on properties and renegotiate with LPs that had invested in my deals. And I am so incredibly thankful for the people who had invested with me, and how many of them just immediately said, I'm going to become a mentor. I can see what you're going through. This is really rough. Like, we'll figure this out. But more importantly, how are you doing? It's funny. I met with a guy just the other day who lives in California and flew out here to come see me. He and I have done, probably $25 million worth of deals together. He's still an LP in my properties today and lost several $1 million in 2008 on my properties. And I just remember literally calling him almost in tears. I'm not quite sure what to do. What do I do? I was 26 years old. This whole market crash was a shock, to me. Looking back, I had structured these deals to where they needed the market to continue. Now, the reason why I'm in industrial is because I can buy properties that have some kind of intrinsic value no matter what the market does. And so if my debt service coverage ratio is good, the market can go down substantially and we're still making the mortgage payments and we're still hanging on to it. I can kind of handle these market fluctuations, where if you own a bunch of development property and the market goes down and you're not able to build, you have to make those mortgage payments or you lose the property, and no fun.
So it's interesting because I hear in there a strategic shift that you made.
Certainly.
As a result of the shock of ’08 and the lessons learned. What were some of the most important personal lessons that you learned in light of business and the people that you work with?
Yeah, long-term thinking and trying to find partners that are going to be the right people and have long-term thinking along with me. And by long-term thinking, it's funny. I just this last week had a situation come up. We signed a new loan on a property that I'm buying. I think it was a $4.5 million loan. The bank sent over loan documents. We signed them. And after the bank wrote me, a couple days after we closed, they wrote me and said, "Hey, look, there was a typo in the loan documents. We actually gave you 6 months longer of interest only period than we had intended to, and that you had agreed with us on. This is our mistake, but we want to ask you, would you be willing to go back and amend?" And immediately I said, "Send it over. We're going to re-sign it." We'd modeled for this. We knew this was going to happen. And the last thing I want to do is screw these guys. And, who knows, he might lose his job over it. It was a typo that, they or their attorney missed. It was not our intent. That was not the type of loan that we thought we were getting. Everybody just happened to miss this one, which is, there's, how many hundreds of pages of documents, stuff like that does happen, despite all of our best effort to make sure that doesn't happen. Typos happen. And so it's funny because then we closing another loan with them and had a meeting with them yesterday, and they brought up that, "Hey, we remember that you did that. And so this loan, we have the ability to go raise the rate on you before we close, but we're not going to do that because we remember, it matters to us that kind of you saved our butt and at a time when you had a chance to screw us." And so, those are the types of things that just working with quality people who are going to do the right thing, even when, they have a chance to screw you. That to me is, I don't want to get up and go to business if I'm always having to be concerned that people are going to screw me if they get the chance.
So as a young man, it sounds like you didn't go to college.
Right.
How did you begin to develop the ability to identify the types of partners that you just described? The people who are not going to screw you. Because, as a young person, it's many times it could be easy for someone sophisticated to take advantage of you. What did you learn in that process early in your career?
Yeah, it's funny. Mistakes are the best teacher. I feel like maybe I'm dumber than most and I need to make mistakes in order to learn from them. I remember one of the real early on lessons. I'd mentioned that I built a coffee shop with my wife. The second location that we did, we basically found one that had shut down and found the guy who had the lease on it, and he was still paying on the lease, and naively thought, it was probably his branding. I can do a better job and go in here and kind of revive this old location that's shut down. I say he took advantage of me. He took advantage of the naivety that I thought I could fix it. Well, he'd already been open at that location for a couple of years and found that there's just not enough parking and there's not enough of an attraction to that neighborhood. And so it was a bad location for a coffee shop. And so I went in and kind of used all of his equipment and opened up. It only took a couple of weeks to open it up because it was all there. But I was signed on to a lease agreement for, I basically took over his lease, and gosh, good for him. He was like, great, I'll wash my hands of this mistake. Some kid's going to come along and, try to make a go at it. And I remember it only took 3 months to realize just nobody stopped by. I mean, that location was empty most of the time. And I remember what a just absolute, the only way to say it, he was an absolute to work with. He was like, you screwed up. I don't care. You should have asked me. And I just remember feeling this visceral feeling of gosh, there are some awful people in the world,
right?
And to his credit, he didn't do anything illegal. I was the one that brought this up. But if I was presented with that situation and I saw some young kid come up and was all gung ho about it, I would have sat down, now I would have sat down and said hey, this location actually didn't work for me. And let me tell you why. And, and there was none of that. He just kept encouraging me. Oh, you'll make it work. You'll do a great job. I was, he basically kind of, I don't want to say conned me, but kind of helped me along to this narrative to think that I could make this work. And I remember having to borrow money from a friend to buy myself out of the lease and then pay that back, which hurt the other location for a while. It was quite a journey, and it just, jerks.
It's interesting though, because it doesn't sound like you're necessarily embittered by that. You've just sort of okay, lesson learned.
Right.
Now I know who I'm looking for and who I'm not looking for.
Right.
The more understanding that you get of the business, the more that then obviously informs the decisions that you make.
Yeah. It's pattern matching, right? If you can get to the place where you can kind of make unemotional decisions and pattern match.
Though, because you strike me as a pretty enthusiastic guy, right? And
yeah.
I'm speaking as one myself, so I know my emotions can come in. How do you match your intuition and your emotional intelligence with the objectivity that's necessary in order to make these big decisions that you're making?
The most significant change, well, first of all, not always, right? That's a constant struggle.
Yep.
But the most significant change in my life was 4 or 5 years ago when I discovered therapy and meditation right around the same time. The ability to be able to just kind of sit down for 10 or 15 minutes a day, shut my brain off, allow it to just kind of be and just be okay without trying to solve problems. And also this, I feel like it's an old Buddhist concept of kind of the disassociation between the ego and the monkey mind.
Sure.
And then the self, the ego and the monkey mind on one side and yourself. It's that idea of who's talking to you when you're talking to yourself, or who are you talking to when you talk to yourself? And, of course, there's not scientific basis for this, but it's a really interesting way to think about the thoughts that bounce around in your head, that there is the you that is separate at the core of it, and that is a fundamentally okay person. Right. And then there's the monkey mind, which is not okay. It's the ego, which says this person's unsafe. You got to do better. You got to get more accolades. You got to have these people like you better. And if you can somehow learn to try to disassociate those two, I feel like I can both be a really, at my best day, a really enthusiastic person and excited, but also step back and say I'm excited, but you're the kind of person that I've seen before that is really dangerous. And so therefore I'm going to pull away from you, and we can have a fun friendship, but I'm not going to trust you with my money, or we're not going to go into business together, even though I have fun with you.
Okay. So a couple of different things there.
This is odd construction podcast conversation.
Yeah, I know. It is a little bit. What's been your main insight? Because you mentioned therapy. What's been your main insight from therapy?
It's a great question. Just this view of myself, this kind of outside view of myself, almost this ability to step outside myself and look at my actions and see how these emotions that come up sometimes, these reactions, are driven by this need deep inside me to be liked, to be loved, to have people think I'm special.
Yeah.
And then disassociate from that and say, but I actually don't need that.
Right.
Viktor Frankl book that he wrote when he was in a concentration camp.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. He talks about lengthening the space between stimulus and response.
Yes. Yeah. So the quote
a powerful thing.
Yeah, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our freedom to choose.
Yes.
To make our choice. And then in that choice is our freedom and our growth.
I thought before going to therapy and before kind of discovering this new way of thinking, I thought that I had no choice but to respond the way that I felt first.
Right.
And so later then getting to the place where you can have a stimulus, have a whatever. I mean, it's funny, one thing I constantly struggle with, if I lose a deal, it happened a couple of months ago where it's just this fantastic property that we were in escrow on, and the seller came back and tried to renegotiate with me. And my initial response was like, he is attacking me. Like there was this just deep inside, like feeling that I needed to fight.
Right.
And then I remember thinking at that moment, like, I'm going to lengthen the space and just sit with this for a minute.
Okay. How did you lengthen that space? Because that's the question I wanted to ask you. How do you get into that space between stimulus and response? How did you do that?
One of the ways that I've learned quite a bit, and I'm still learning, is this, to notice the somatic data. Is it my stomach? Is it in my chest? Is there some tightening? I started to notice this feeling of like reactivity, and it's almost the fight or flight trigger, right? Like
it is, yeah.
If you're walking down the street and you hear a loud boom and you look and someone's, firing a gun, like you're going to respond.
Right.
And you have to. That's great. And that second, you should, you start to get in a car crash and you reach for your kid. Like there's some things that your body will do as a reaction that you don't need that space between stimulus and response.
Yeah. Yeah.
But learning to identify which of the things are the ones that you need to respond to and which are the ones that you need to like take a minute. And I remember like getting that, it was an email from the real estate agent, the broker who was selling the property, saying that the seller was kind of being a jerk and just playing hardball with us and being totally unreasonable. I remember feeling this like tightness in my chest and this personal attack, and then just said, you know what, I'm going to take a day to respond to him. And by the next day, I had realized I don't need to buy this property. There's nothing, like there's plenty of other properties that we could buy. And so I just sent this really nice email to the seller, or to the seller, and CC'd the seller and the agent and said, I'm sorry, that's just too far. We're attached as the cancellation. If you want to try to work with us and be reasonable, that's fine. And he literally just sent over the cancellation and we were done, and washed our hands and walked away.
Yeah, I think in there is a couple of things. Is one of the things I've learned about negotiation over the years is that being willing to walk away is one of the most powerful tools in negotiating toolbox.
Yeah, it's true.
So I'd like to go back.
Easier said than done, right?
but you see, even being willing to walk away is even more important than actually walking away, because if you can sit in that power, so to speak, of being willing to walk away, then you don't fall victim to chasing it. Chasing that deal, like you said, and the fact that you could go through the mental process of saying, okay, I love this deal, but this is happening with the terms changing. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other opportunities still out there. Therefore, I don't have to do this.
Right.
I want to go back a little earlier, though, because, with your company, you have a number of investors who invest with you.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest struggles that a lot of construction companies have, people in business in general, is they go into business with the wrong people for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about, you've got someone, let's say, and I can think of multiple people in my life who I would consider to be extremely close friends, who I would never go into business with. Never. And how do you make that distinction between someone you like and someone who you don't want to have any kind of financial involvement with?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I would like to be better at articulating the why. But the reality for me is that it's more of a gut feeling.
Okay.
It's more of a, like, I don't know, just funny things. Like, it's amazing how much data we're capable of taking in through body language and people's eyes darting back and forth. And are they leaning in when they talk? Or are they avoiding certain topics? Are they talking about themselves? It's kind of my recent peeve that's really bothering me. When someone feels the need to talk about themselves a ton and like constantly like, oh, but I'm really good at that. Like, you should just be good at something. You shouldn't have to tell me you're good at it. I mean, one thing that's come up again and again for me, if somebody needs to tell me that they're honest or remind me that they're honest, then they probably actually aren't. So it's all these little things, and then just getting to the place where you say, look, I can't quite articulate this one, but I know that I just don't have a right feeling about this person. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in there about as time goes on and we collect all of this information, like you're saying, and it informs our intuition.
Yeah.
And then helps us to make decisions in addition to the objective data that we have that we add those things together, and that can really be effective. As someone who is it sounds like you're pretty intuitive in the way that you work. Mm-hmm. Do you have partners who are involved in your business who are more objective minded, who can sort of marry up with you and help you through some decisions like that?
Absolutely. So we've been doing, I'm not sure if you've heard of the Culture Index.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Fantastic system for basically kind of grouping different individuals within a business. And it's quite a bit to learn. And it's not the cheapest system, but we're certainly at a place where it started to make sense for our company. And so we took the dive and paid for it and are kind of going through the team, and everybody's taking classes. But you take this relatively simple 8-minute long, it's not even a test. It's just your screen fills up with words and you click the ones that you identify with. It doesn't tell you click 3 or 4. It tells you just click any ones. And so you might fill the screen with 26 different words. The first screen is words that you identify with in your current situation. The second screen is words that you need to be good at in order to show up in your place of work successfully, or to be successful in your place of work. And, it kind of helps you identify like, oh, I might be, daring and, click these words on the first page. And then the second one, you're like, I need to be reserved and quiet and, allow somebody kind of deferential and, these things that you're like, oh, I have to be that, but I'm not very good at it, but I should be better at that. Anyway, all that to say, that system is really helpful for me because I need people that are smarter than me, which is a good percentage of the population is, so that they're helping kind of run analysis and be perceptive and figure out what they're running the spreadsheets for me and figuring out whether or not we should really do this deal.
Okay, but it's interesting because you've said this a couple of times in our interviews so far about people being smarter than you or something like that, right?
Right.
And I have no problem with that at all because I know many people who are way smarter than me. But what is it that you bring to the table where people are saying, I want to work with Levi because of X? What is that?
I'll steal a Steve Jobs quote because I heard it and have never been able to forget it since I heard it. He said, other people play the instruments really well and I play the orchestra. And for me, that's what it is I can identify talent within people, shine a spotlight on them, give them the tools and resources they need, help them identify. And that's one of the things that I feel like a big portion of the population struggles with is identifying clear goals and objectives and sticking to them. I can take a team of people and say, hey guys, see that flagpole way off in the horizon? Like there, that's where we're going. I want us to get there. And which then motivates people to put their head down and do the work and look up every once in a while and say, remember Levi said that, we're going there. And so that for me is like, I can find people who are much smarter and much more talented than me at all the parts and pieces. And I can keep in my head, oh, you're doing that over here. This person's doing that over there. And together we're going to come back together and we're going to make this and we're going to head to that point.
So I heard two things there, identifying the end goal, but then also identifying the talent within different people to put together the team to achieve that end goal.
Yeah. And the downside over and over again I've had, and something I constantly need to work on, is I will get people to burn themselves out. People do, like, often the feedback I'll get is like, I'm so excited about this. I'm so happy to be a part of this team. I find myself working at, 2 a.m. on Sunday morning because it just is so it feels so fulfilling to me to be a part of this. And again and again, I've had people burn themselves out or be, kind of almost even start to resent me. And so that's something I'm constantly working on, is trying to dial it back and say, but make sure you spend time with your family. Make sure you're not pushing, you don't need to push that hard. It's okay to go paddleboarding in the afternoon if you need to.
It's interesting. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I don't know if you've heard of the book of Ecclesiastes. It's a tremendously modern, it was written thousands of years ago, but it's tremendously modern. And there's this one passage, it says, better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind.
Yeah. Gosh.
I've been thinking about that one.
That's a good one. That's deep, doesn't it? Wow.
Yeah. So we've got 2 hands, right? And it's okay to fill up one of them with toil, right? Yeah. But then what are you doing with that other hand?
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting.
Oh, man. Yeah. That is very interesting.
So
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I really do too. It's interesting though, because if you read the whole passage, on the one hand, it condemns laziness, but on the other hand, it condemns having two hands full and with toil and chasing after the wind. And so there's this balance, and again, this is thousands of years ago. And basically it's talking about work-life balance thousands of years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me ask you though, with the way that your company, Harbor Capital, is, just give us the 30-second snapshot, because I know there's a particular topic that I want to get into based around your business. So give us the 30 seconds on Harbor Capital.
Yeah. So in 2019, sold a multifamily development company that I had built that was building apartment buildings internationally. We were renting them to the US government. Basically, wherever there was a US embassy in a country where housing was hard to find, we would go buy land and develop an apartment building there. And so when I sold it, there was a significant pipeline of properties, and, typical size is 125 to 150 unit apartment building. We had a significant pipeline of projects all over, mostly in West Africa or East Africa, that we were building. I sold that in 2019, and then basically took a little bit of time off when the pandemic hit, trying to figure out what was next, and realized that of all the different properties I'd been involved in, and, for sure it was real estate. There's no question. I'm real estate through and through. But for all the different properties and investments I've been involved in, I really despised the ones that kind of, you had so many people chasing them. For instance, you go try to buy a house in Austin, even right now when the market's kind of softening because of debt a little bit, you still have 10, 15, 20 offers on a property. Like, I don't want to be wait for the next greater fool. I don't want to buy something at the top of the market today and hope the market keeps going up. I want to buy something where there's not 50 people chasing it. That's just deep value, good property. And industrial, by far and away, ticked all the boxes for me of what kind of business I wanted to build. It was one that I could become an expert in. There were not very many other experts in it. It was one that, I live in Austin now. And so I could drive to Houston, Dallas, San Antonio from Austin and be home by dinner. Just a ton of opportunity that's overlooked because a lot of sellers are older and maybe bought a property 15 years ago, don't know what it's worth, and undersell all the time. And so, a lot of the value add that we're doing is buying mispriced assets or misleased assets. That's one of the big things. Is we bought a property recently. It had a tenant in there. The tenant was struggling financially, and they were paying. The property was generating $301,000 a year NOI after all the expenses. We went to that tenant and said, "Hey, do you want to cancel your lease? Because we know we can rent it for more." Their business was struggling. They agreed, took a couple months to get out of there. Literally, while they were getting out, we found a new tenant. We signed up a new tenant, and it's $452,000 a year in NOI now. We paid $4.2 million for that building. It's worth 6.3, something like that now. And all that happened within 5 months of ownership. That's a perfect example of kind of value that's just sitting there, just needs a little bit of hustle to make, to extract that value.
And you have a particular project that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's in conjunction with a construction company. Can you describe that just a little bit for our listeners, please, Levi?
Yeah, so we're growing quickly. Once we close the projects we have in escrow, we'll be past $100 million in assets under management. And as the thing that's growing the most is our access to capital. We now have 1,000 LPs on our list, many who are doing their third, fourth, fifth investment with us and kind of calling us up and saying, "Hey, I want to allocate more. If I give you $1 million, where could you place it?" And so we're trying to basically look at what are the most sustainable ways to grow. You and I talked about this earlier, this kind of silly little mantra that we have in the company is buy, refi, die. Basically, that means we hate taxes.
Join the human race.
That's right. And so in order to buy something that you're okay with that concept of refiing, or, sometimes 1031 out, but refi and own it forever and die and pass the asset on to your kids, it has to be a top quality asset. And while there's most definitely real estate to be had in the market, we're finding, we have more capital available than deals, and we don't want to kind of go down market and buy trash that we're not going to be happy owning. Even if it's got a 10 cap, I don't want to own crappy properties that won't handle a downturn well. Yep. And so we started to take a hard look at, what would going up market be like? And if you go look at Class A industrial buildings on the market, you're going to be competing against all of the big institutional players, and their cost of capital is just cheaper than ours. A REIT has access to extremely cheap debt right now, and they've got a bunch of money that they've got to place. And so it didn't make sense for us to kind of just lower our returns and say, "Hey, we're going middle of the fairway. We're just going to buy and return you 4% of your money every year." We're still value add investors. We want value. And so we started a conversation with a contractor, a really well-known called the Urban Companies. They're based out of Houston, really well-known industrial contractor. Last year, they did $350 million of industrial space. They're a contractor through and through, but they happen to also have a couple of lots that they had purchased off market through some relationships that they have, that they were just sitting on saying like, hey, we'll do a build to suit. We'll do something here down the road. And so we worked out a plan with them to build 2 different industrial parks, and we will buy them upon completion. And the price that we're able to buy them for upon completion is substantially lower than their quote unquote market value at that time. Properties are trading in the area. Owner user properties are trading at about $175, even $180 a foot. And our going in price is just above $130. And so we have basically the opportunity to come in, and we're doing this structure by we're basically giving them a bunch of money up front to use as the collateral for their construction loan. And then they're building the building. We're not going to own it until it's complete.
Interesting.
But yeah, hired a great law firm, went through this, intense background check. And the thing we heard over and over again from Don, the owner, about Don, the owner of the Urban Companies, and about their team is that, these guys just keep their word. They deliver product on time. They high quality.
So tell me about that, because it's so interesting. I know as folks are in construction, there's so many opportunities coming their way right and left for developing land or constructing land, getting into the kinds of deals that you're talking about.
Right.
What did you look for in a contractor when you were considering this particular opportunity?
So much of it was integrity. And integrity to me is kind of seen a few different ways. One is I actually talked to people who had buildings that they had built by the Urban Companies. And what they said is similar to what we talked about earlier. We had something we missed in the contract, and the Urban Companies team made it right. They came back and said, hey, we both had this intent. The contract was written wrong, and we're going to fix it. And that to me speaks of integrity, and that these are the people who can do what's right. The other thing is integrity can show up in construction. And so I don't just walk around the front of the building and look at what the front door looks like. We go around the back and see, what they do with the gutters when they go into a drainage swale in the back of the building, and saw attention to detail. All of the water runoff situation was handled correctly. Paint lines were taken all the way down to the edge. It's funny, this one little detail, they do tilt up buildings a lot, and they do, they basically take the gutters and they recess them into the concrete. So they basically form the tilt-up forms with a channel for the gutters to run in. And so then you get this, it's about a 2.5 or 3 inch inset that the gutter goes into, and then it ends up flush, and it just has a nice look to it. And it's, better, in my mind, a better quality product, because it's not this gutter that's screwed into the outside of the building.
It's very interesting though, because, you're describing something that is, it's more than just looking at a spreadsheet and penciling out the numbers. It's actually looking at the work that's being done and drawing conclusions based on the quality of that work.
Yeah.
Is that something that you have an eye for yourself, or based on your experience? Because it sounded like, when you were young, you were doing quite a bit of construction yourself.
Yeah, I would say yes, I do, but then also just an incredible team. It sounds like you actually interviewed Antonia Botero recently.
Awesome.
Yeah, so she is our chief operating officer at the company, and also has multiple billions of dollars worth of experience as a construction manager, and just brings an eye to the table. And then Clint Ivey, who's on our team as well, has built all sorts of different projects throughout his career, and been, basically when we all walk in, there's a lot of experience, and we're able to pick out what's quality and, where kind of corners were being cut.
That's interesting. So where do you want to take Harbor Capital, Levi? What's your goal for the business?
When a year ago when we started, that flagpole out on the horizon for me that I set and started talking to the team when I started to hire people was $1 billion of assets under management by 2030. We're going to get there a lot sooner than I thought. Our first year, the plan was to buy kind of $5 to $15 million, and we're closing in on 100 already. And so we need to set a new goal in terms of scale. And it's not that I'm sitting here saying I'm only motivated by money, but I am someone who, I heard a term the other day and it resonated with me. I'm someone who's coin operated.
Right.
It does matter to me to put points on the board, to be able to win, to be able to take good care of my family. I do want to build a family who is able to steward generational wealth. And then I want to leave a bit of generational wealth for them to be able to steward. And even if that's just in the form of, a trust that pays for schooling multiple generations down the road or something along those lines. I want to be able to teach my kids to be able to steward assets and wealth well so that they can teach their kids to do that. And for me, that was really one of those kind of putting a stake in the ground and saying, like, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to be able to like build something that lasts for generations, to be the start of something that lasts for generations.
Let me ask you about that. I'm just curious because it sounds like you came from sort of a challenging background.
Yeah, both my wife and I grew up in situations that were challenging, for sure.
But it sounds like you've been able to build a relatively stable environment for your children. And when I say relatively, I just say that because I don't know you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say I have to point to my wife on that one.
No. I understand.
The stability.
But here's my question. I can hear in you a drive that was there from a very young age. And a lot of people who become successful in business and build businesses come from backgrounds which are not necessarily privileged to begin with, right?
Right.
How do you, as a parent, instill in your children a work ethic and a perspective of non-entitlement, even though they have a background where perhaps they're not going through any of the stuff that you went through as a kid?
Yeah. Yeah. We don't just hand our kids very much. One thing that I'm a big believer in is I want our kids to have autonomy. And so when they turn 16, we buy them a car, and it's a relatively nice, we bought our daughter a RAV4 recently, and something that's safe, partly because I have safety. For some reason, I just have this fear of, I've seen, multiple situations where there's kind of teenagers in my kids' high schools that were killed. And you kind of look at it and it's like, well, yeah, they were driving a 1992 Honda Civic. Like, it wasn't a safe vehicle. Like, part of my heart that just aches for those parents and the thought that, like, what if I just spent a little bit more and they had airbags and,
Yeah.
Kids, when you're learning to drive, you're not as safe. I don't care if you're a daredevil or not. It's just not as safe. I know when I was that age, I was not a safe driver. And so to me, there's some kind of basic things that I feel very comfortable in kind of helping my kids out with, but I don't feel like we're over the top. Like, for instance, we have a son who's going to be a senior next year in college. And we sat down with him at the start of his college career and said, hey, we're going to pay for everything, like give you cash and everything in year one. In year two, you're expected to go have some sort of job to start to supplement that income. And we're basically going to stop giving you kind of pocket money. We'll still pay for rent and everything else. And then we just tiered the system down to where going into his senior year, he has 2 paying part-time jobs. He's helping people. Like, he does this program where he helps people write reports and things for him and charges them to basically for writing assistance. And then he works for a political action, like a committee thing, and gets paid for that. And then has just all these things that he's doing. I'm so impressed with how he's stepped up and been able to kind of become increasingly productive. But I remember that first year, him and even my wife and I talking about, like, I don't know if he's going to make it. Like, does he understand that, like, we're serious about this? We're going to start to taper this off, and he's going to have to, like, and so he did. I mean, every summer he's been able to find a job and work and build up. And he's one of the few, we talked about this the other day, he's going to graduate from college with a sizable savings account that he's been able to build up through college because he's been working so hard through college to be able to put money away, and has this feeling of, hey, I'm on my own after this.
Do you want your kids to come into your business with you?
I have no preference on that. Okay. I think everybody's different. If one of my kids did, I know which one it would be. I've got one kid who asks me lots of questions about the business, but whether or not she does, I don't know in the future. My oldest son is extremely interested in politics, and I don't think he ever would be interested in the business, but I basically see what I'm passing on to them. The most important value is the stewardship. First of all, be a good person. But, when it comes to money, it's the stewardship of money that's more important than money itself. Because, I want to raise kids who are able to, like, handle a lot and take good care of it rather than to just get a lot and waste it.
Handle a lot and take good care of it rather than get a lot and waste it.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah. Whether or not that a lot that they get comes from me, I just think, good financial practices attract wealth. You get more people that trust you with money. You get, like, early on in my career, I remember it being so hard to raise money. Where now, we've raised money on a deal a little bit ago, and we've stopped doing it this way just because I've got some feedback from investors that it's a little bit too intense. It's kind of too much of a cattle call. But we raised over $10 million on a deal a couple of months ago, and it took 9 minutes. Because there's that many investors who have said like, hey, I trust what you're doing. We understand, we've seen your systems. We've gotten returns from deals that you own already. And we love these returns. Like, we want to keep doing this. And so now we've started to roll out to a smaller and smaller subset of our investor group every time, and basically stop when it's full so that it doesn't kind of create this sense of urgency.
Interesting. That's interesting. So just tell us, I know you've told us a little bit about your business. Just give us, again, a little bit more about how we can get in touch with you, who you're looking to work with, and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, so we are Class B, sometimes Class A, increasingly more Class A industrial in Houston, Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio. We are hyper-focused. We know what we know, and we know what we don't know, and we don't touch what we don't know. We love just geeking out on buildings that present some sort of an opportunity. It's funny, we just yesterday got a new one in contract that I'm extremely excited about. It's a vacant building that has just so much potential to create just good returns in the long run. And we love things like that. It's kind of hidden gem of an opportunity. We've got 5 people on the team, as I said earlier, approaching $100 million of assets under management, but continue to grow that. And we're deep value add. We won't, I've heard this saying before, you can't outrun a bad basis, meaning if you overpay for a property, you overpaid. And it's, you can't do anything to fix that kind of stupid. And so for us, we pass on hundreds of deals before we go into something and say, you know what, the price per square foot actually makes sense on this one. We always like to buy, when we buy existing, we buy below replacement cost. And then when we buy, we're doing the one we talked about earlier, the 2 different industrial parks where we're buying those pre-construction. First of all, because of the partnership that we have there and the fact that he's been great to us and leaving a good bit of money on the table for us to extract value from those buildings long term. But also then we're in a city, those are in Katy, Texas, which is growing really quickly and has almost no supply on the market. Literally, we did a survey a couple of weeks ago. We went and kind of re-looked at all the comps again. And there was one building on the market in that 10 to 25,000 square foot space, period. I mean, of any type, only one building that criteria, and it was listed for like 15 or 20% above our base rate that we've put into our financial models. That was encouraging.
Interesting. Your website is
harborcap.com.
Nice.
And excellent. I'm on Twitter a lot, talking about stuff and putting my mouth often, but it's at Levi James here is the handle on Twitter.
Beautiful. We will put those links in the show notes. Last question. You moved to Austin. What's the one restaurant we need to visit in Austin the next time we're there?
There is a place called Suerte, Suerte, that is just fantastic. It's this kind of, I think they call it interior Mexican food, but they basically import all of the corn that they make their tortillas and different things from Mexico, from different parts of Mexico. And that's our spot. My wife and I go there as much as we can and never can get enough.
Excellent. I just pulled it up. I will put the link in the show notes there on East 6th Street in Austin.
That's right. It's the spot.
Awesome. Levi, you've been very generous with your time. I appreciate you being willing to go certain places that perhaps we hadn't talked about at the beginning of the interview.
No, it's fun. So much fun.
Yeah, but it was a good time. And I do wish you the best. And continued success to you, man. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Eric. And just before you jet off, I want to remind you that one of the things that I help my clients with is when you promote a project manager into a project executive role, and they go from being hyper project focused to then having to shift to building a team and being more people focused. They can often struggle. And it's at that point that they need an outside voice to help them identify the goals that they need to achieve as someone in a new leadership role, the obstacles that are in the way to them achieving those goals, and how they're going to overcome those obstacles. And that's exactly what I do with my executive coaching clients. So if you're the owner of a construction company and you have someone in mind who you think would benefit from an outside sounding board, an experienced leader and mentor who can help them with the challenges of being in a new leadership role, reach out to me on my website, constructiongenius.com/contact. You can just fill in the information there. I will respond to you within 24 hours, and we can have a short 10-minute conversation about if or how I can help you in your current environment. Thanks again for listening to Construction Genius, and I will catch you on the next episode.